Being a good GM requires consistency, endless preparation, and player appreciation. This is Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master.
Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Confessions. Well, this episode of Confessions, I'm going to be talking about character death. It's kind of weird. Several channels that I watch have been talking about character death over the last few weeks. It seems like it's a trend that's going on. So I thought that I would jump in and give my 2 cents. This is actually going to be a video response to Dan Wells. He has his own YouTube channel of the same name, Dan Wells. I love his reviews. I love the stuff that he does. And this is going to be a video response to the video that he made. I'll try to remember to put a description down below and respond to his video. So Dan talked about kind of the 2 considerations that you want to make when you are thinking about character deaths in your game. He talked about the story consideration, and he talked about the consideration of kind of old school challenge-based role playing where, you know, death wasn't that unusual because it's all about consequences. And for me, as you guys know, I play in a style called play to find out, where I generally don't like to fudge dice rolls. I like the dice to determine the outcomes. I definitely believe in challenge-based role playing, and I believe that role playing is about player characters making decisions and living with the outcome of those decisions. And I am very much against consequence-free role playing. And I think that death definitely has to be on the table for player characters. Or why are we doing this? I mean, how many times can you maybe give a player character a grievous wound that hinders them for a long period of time, or steal their magic items or other equipment before that gets old, and those are the only consequences that are in your game? So I strongly believe that death has to be on the table, because, again, consequence-free role-playing seems like a huge waste of time. Now, on the other side of the coin, opposite play to find out, of course, you have play to create, which is a much more narrative-focused type of consideration, where the player characters and the game masters are collaborating to tell a good story. And that is something that Dan touched on, that player death without impact on the story, or without meaning, can really be suboptimal. But beyond my preference for play to find out styling and role playing with consequences up to and including death, it kind of reminds me of work, when, you know, when your job has these policies and they warn you that breaking this policy could lead to circumstances up to and including termination. So up to and including character death, some of the consequences could lead up to that. My question really is, as a game master who is running kind of in a more play to create style, where you're not letting the dice necessarily tell the story and you're trying to tell a good story, how do you make the determinations of which player characters have plot armor? In that style, I think Dan said that he is not against the idea of player death, but player death having meaning and relevance and being appropriate for the story. So the question that I have is, if you are going to manage character death on that level, how do you know which character is going to not have plot armor? How do you know which characters are going to be resistant to death until it means something, or until it will end in a really great story, and which players are going to be okay with, well, right now my death wouldn't mean anything and it really wouldn't be good for the story, so I have plot armor right now, right? And which players are going to be okay with, well, since my character death would really mean something right now, I lose plot armor. So my question is, if story and narrative and a player character's death being meaningful is something that you're trying to manage, how do you make those decisions? Now, I will say that though I believe that character death has to be a consequence, I believe that consequences have to exist unless it makes the game pretty meaningless. I am not completely dogmatic with it, because for instance, if I started an adventure or a campaign in media res, I would really feel bad if a player character died in the first scene or at the beginning of an adventure. That just, even I am not that dogmatic about not trying to create a good story. So I'm not completely dogmatic and unsympathetic to the idea of character death meaning something, because I have never had it happen, but I would feel really bad, especially if we were playing a new game and trying to learn it in a new system and everybody's excited for it, and you start the adventure in media res and a player character dies in the first scene. That would make me feel really bad, despite my preferences for whether or not there should be player character death in the game. And then the other question that I have is, I am not an expert on literature, or I'm not an expert writer or storyteller, but I would bet good money that in most media entertainment and in most literature, the wide majority of stories end with the good guys winning. So I think that in a lot of people's mind, they have, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I don't feel that I am, a lot of people in their minds associate a good story with the good guys winning. To give an example, a lot of people felt that Avengers Infinity Gauntlet was not a complete story because at the end, Thanos won. And a lot of people are not used to the idea of a complete story, including the bad guy winning. So if you are attempting to tell a good story and attempting to manage that player character death to tell a good story, does that mean that you could violate the idea that in good stories, the good guys always win? So in the idea of managing player death and telling a good story, does that mean that also in your games, though a couple of player characters may die for effect, that you also are going to guarantee that the player characters are going to win? And I am really against that idea, because why are we playing if we know that player characters are going to have plot armor, and that why are we playing if we're going to make sure that the good guys win? Because a lot of people associate good stories with the good guys winning at the end. So if we're going to guarantee that, why are we even wasting our time? So those are kind of my thoughts on the idea of player character death. What do you think about that? How do you handle player character death in your game? Do you let the dice fall where they may, or are you trying intentionally to tell a good story? And because a lot of people associate a good story with the good guys winning, does that also mean that you're basically guaranteeing that the player characters are going to succeed in your campaign? Let me know in the description below. Talk to you later.